now 3:01, May 16, 2017. And I call to order the adjourned meeting of the City Council of the City of Victorville. And the City Council sitting is the Library Board of Trustees, Southern California Logistics Rail Authority, Southern California Logistics Airport Authority, successor agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, the Victorville Joint Powers Financing Authority, the Victorville Water District, and the city is Housing Assets successor. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Gomez.
Good evening.
Councilmember Kennedy is absent from tonight's meeting. Councilmember Negretti.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox.
Here.
Mayor Garcia.
Here. At this time, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, and it will be led by Councilmember Eric Negretti. Please stand.
Thank you. Please put your hand over your heart and begin. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one item on our agenda this evening, and this is pre-budget workshop establishing the annual budget for fiscal year 2017-2018. Madam Clerk, read the recommendation.
There is no recommendation at this time, Mayor Garcia.
There you go. This is at the discretion of the City Council. And I turn it over to our mayor. I'm always saying the mayor, our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. So we left off 2 weeks ago towards the tail end of the Public Works Department, I think, or maybe we finished it, or perhaps there may have been questions. I don't recall exactly. But just to give you a little bit of an update, as we mentioned, we continue to work on the budget to bring the council a little bit of flexibility for the June 6th meeting. We anticipate having some revenue surpluses that the council will be able to discuss and direct the funding thereof, whether that's to police, perhaps fire truck, or some capital projects, or to reserves, or some combination of all 3 or 4 of those things. So we continue to work on the budget and look forward to your input today, and of course on June 6th as well. So, John, correct me, where exactly did we leave off?
We did leave off, Mr. Matthews.
We're on Public Works, and I think we were going to start on the Public Works page at the top with engineering.
Okay.
Send down that page today.
Well, come on down. Slightly different setup. You guys are a little more comfortable, I guess, huh?
I think I'll sit down since that's the way it's set up. I'll try to keep this brief, and feel free to ask questions at any time. As you know, engineering is a division of the Public Works Department, so I'd like to give a brief overview and do some highlights of the CIP. I'm not going to cover the water CIP. That's going to be underwater. Tech Matthews will cover that. And so I'm going to start off first with engineering has 40 positions. 11 of those are in traffic maintenance. There are 6 major functions of engineering. These aren't necessarily in the order of importance, but number 1, we manage most of the capital improvement program, not all of it. So that includes the design, inspection, and construction management of the capital improvement program. Number 2, we are responsible for development review of infrastructure and public right-of-way. That includes reviewing for planning commission, working with planning on the conditions of approval and the plan and map review, and also issuing permits for inspection and acceptance for private development. Number 3, that also kind of dovetails into the permitting function. We permit all the activity, construction activity in the public right of way. That could be a utility company, it could be private development. Number 4, traffic engineering, we're responsible for traffic engineering, which includes signals, striping, signing. Number 5, we provide in-house engineering support for public works operation and maintenance and for the airport. We also, number 6, provide survey, which is that includes reviewing maps and also construction statements. So those are the basic functions of engineering. In the budget this year, there's nothing dramatic in the personnel. Our only change is one title change from an engineering specialist to an administrative analyst. That's pretty minor. If I could direct you to the Public Works tab.
Before you get there, I have a couple of questions on the engineering.
Okay.
If I might, Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
The city of Victorville established a street lighting assessment district some 2.5 years ago. And so everyone, I guess, that has property here, pays taxes, pays into that. And I noted that you're going to be using, or have been using, those funds for signals. And I suppose that's okay. I haven't gone back and looked at the resolution. But I also noticed that development fees are all, for new development, is also going to pay development fees. Is that correct?
It's very small. There's an old streetlight development impact plan, but it's a very low fee. There's very little in the fund balance, but it's separate from the assessment.
Who handles the undergrounding of utilities? Is that your department?
Well, if they're dry utilities, typically the utility companies, Edison or Charter.
The reason that I ask, on Palmdale Road, there's a new used auto parts store that went in, a new auto parts store went in. It's across the street from an auto parts place. And the underground utilities right in front of that building. But next door, which is a fairly new building, it's not old, utilities are overhead. And then next door at the shopping center, they're underground again.
Oh, I see. So in relation to private development,
yes,
that's a planning process. Engineering works with planning, but those projects are
okay.
They go through the planning review with the planning commission.
Okay,
So sometimes undergrounding can be deferred. Chris Porter might be able to answer that better than I could, but there's actually a policy in place for undergrounding, but there is the authority also to defer the undergrounding to a later time.
Well, it does need to be answered now, but I noticed that there was the Edison trucks, 5 of them, a huge crew. I counted 12 people, and there was more there. And they ended up undergrounding under the brand new, but next door they didn't. I don't know why they couldn't plan this. Should have been underground. If it was deferred, now it's time to do it. So now it's underground, not underground, underground. Somebody needs to look into it, that's all.
I don't have an answer on that particular development.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question too.
Yes.
It's really hard to hear. I don't know if you guys in the back can hear, but I'm having a very, very difficult time. I don't know if we can raise our voices a little louder, maybe use a microphone. I'm hearing, I don't know, but
Okay.
if you can speak a little louder, I would appreciate that. My question comes in, so you were talking about the position from an engineer title to an administrative analyst. Is that a demotion of a person, or is that a...
No, it's a slight increase in compensation. It's actually an upgrade, but it's not a very dramatic upgrade.
Thank you.
Well, any other questions? If I could direct your attention to the Public Works Department summary. It's on the second page, and at the top of the page it says engineering summary. You can find that. I don't know if everybody's there. It has a budget change percentage, and on the top it says personnel, 9%, and that is due to a combination of factors. It's due to the COLA increase and step increases. So it's not a huge increase. It's not due to an increase in the number of positions. If you'll notice, the operation and maintenance change, that is a big change. It's minus 48%. And the reason for that is because this is a rollout. You don't see the detail that this varies year to year. And it includes projects. There are projects in that number. And some of the projects aren't technically capital projects. It could be a slurry seal project, which is more of a maintenance project. And that's why you see that number vary so much from year to year. So it's not, strictly speaking, it's not purely operations and maintenance, at least the way I would define it. But I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but that's the reason for that change. And then the other change is, it says other charges. That varies a fair amount too, because it has a variety of expenses in it. And the last year, the reason it changed was there was a traffic safety expense that was not included in it, and this year it is. So that's an explanation of the changes. I don't know if anyone has any questions about that.
Brian, how about the capital line item?
The capital line item, again, that varies from year to year, depending on the sum of what's in the whole capital program. And I would like to go into the highlights of the CIP, at least my part of it, if you're ready. Otherwise, I'll answer any questions that you have.
I have a comment from everyone. I noticed that there's at least 2 members of the public here. I don't know if there's any more, but for future reference, if we have a slide up here that they can probably have, I'm sure that's available. I would like to start including the public. Thank you.
If you're ready, I can go into the CIP highlights. I'll keep this brief. I'm just going to touch on a few highlights.
Where?
You don't have any document before you, so you'll just have to listen. I don't have a handout. I didn't really intend on passing out a handout, but I'm certainly available for questions. And there is a CIP tab that has the projects in it, but I wasn't planning on going through every one of them. I really didn't want to take up that much time. However, if you want to focus on a particular project, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, the question, we have a tab for capital project types, or I guess capital improvement. And then street, sewer, traffic signal, is that where you're going from?
Well, yes, but I'm not actually going to turn to that tab, and I'm not going to go through every project, because I didn't want to devote that much time to this. Unless someone wants to focus in on a certain area, that's fine. But I did want to hit a few highlights. First, I'll start with streets. Luna Road will be starting probably mid to late August. That's a county project. It's a cooperative project with the city, so we're contributing funds. That's from Amargosa to Amethyst. That's about a $1.3 million project. And then one change that we're making in the priority list of streets is we're requesting to shift Village Drive into this coming fiscal year. It was going to be a couple years out, but the maintenance activity has had an increase on the road, and so there's been some thought put into shifting it in front of Silica and Industrial Road, and so that's a proposed change in the budget. And then Silica and Industrial would fall the next year, and then the year after that, Mojave Drive. So that's a major change in the street. We're continuing to have an annual slurry seal program with about $1 million a year. Right now we're doing the Green Tree East area, and this coming year we're planning on doing the Square Mile area. That's between Nisqually and Bear Valley and 7th and Balsam. That's our target area for next year. And then on the signal projects, we're planning on constructing a new signal at Mojave and Amethyst. You already know about that because we went to City Council recently. And we have a grant funded project to install a new signal at Mojave and East Trail. And then we also have a Safe Route School project with 2 more signals that are 4-way stops on Mesa Linda, there's one at Mesa Linda, La Mesa, and there's another one at Mesa Linda and Luda. There's also another signal project planned in US 395 in La Mesa, so that would connect La Mesa to Highway 395. And then now I'm going to move into sewer. For our sewer connectivity.
Ryan, before you jump away from streets, can you give just I know the project has started, but just an update on the major project we're doing now on Amethyst and La Mesa roads?
Okay.
Well, La Mesa doesn't go through the 395.
It will, but part of the project with the
As
signal.
a part of the signal project?
Yes, to connect it.
Okay.
Yeah, to
It's the same project, right? Yeah, probably recall recently you awarded a contract, about $10 million contract. It's for La Mesa to rehabilitate the pavement on all of La Mesa from where we left off with the interchange project, basically from El Rio all the way to Cantina to the west end. That's under construction now. And part of the same project is Amethyst from Bear Valley Road to Mojave. It's all under construction. There are multiple crews working. It's about a 3-month project. And along with that, we will be restriping and installing bike lanes on both roads. There's also some underground work. We wanted to make sure we took care of some minor sewer work and water lateral work before we repave the road. But it's mainly a repaving project.
And one thing that we did was we made sure that those roads will be completed before the Luna Road project, so that folks who live in that area aren't having to deal with both major thoroughfares east-west being closed at the same time.
That's right. And just another FYI, Caltrans already has planned out an overlay project on Palmdale Road. They're going to be overlaying Palmdale Road from I-15 to US 395. And we don't have an exact start date on that, but they're estimating it may start somewhere around late August. It could be a little bit later, but that will be just as we're finishing up our La Mesa Amethyst Road project.
You said 2 lanes are going to be added with that Bear Valley Road to Mojave, 2 bike lanes?
We're going to have bike lanes on both sides, on the outer part of the road next to the gutter. So yes, there will be a bike lane in each direction on both roads. It'll be just striping on the pavement. I'm ready to do on the sewer if you're ready. For sewer, we have about $2 million of main line replacements.
I'm sorry, how much?
Main replacements.
No, how much?
About $2 million.
Oh, thank you.
And those were identified in our master plan that we recently completed. And that's going to be an ongoing program every year. We're going to be needs to replace our mains, either a line or replace our mains. And so that's various locations. And those were the CIP highlights. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
One question on there.
Yes.
The sewer, aren't they sending a camera through the sewer lines in the downtown area?
They are. Actually, we have a contract to video our entire sewer system. And so from that, the outcome will be that we'll have a condition rating of all of our sewer lines. And an engineering company will give us a recommendation if we need to rehabilitate with a line or replace. And from that, we'll have an annual program of either lining or replacing sewer lines.
For a long time, we've had business people downtown and residents complain of sewer odors that come and go. Is this intended to find the cause of that, or do we know the cause, or can it be corrected? Recently attended a ribbon cutting of a new business downtown, and it was overwhelming, and then it went away. So there's some problem someplace.
If there's a problem there, the camera should pick it up. You know, if there's a cracked line or something like that that might be letting some gases escape, the camera should pick it up. If not, we'll have to look to our friends at BDWRA because they've got some lines in that area as well. You know, to find out if they could potentially be the source.
That's something we can look at. Sometimes there's turbulence caused. When there's turbulence, it can cause the odors to come up.
Okay, just I know there's been complaints now for, what, 4 or 5 years? It's been a long time. Apparently, we can't find it, or it's not us, I don't know, but since they're doing those cameras, you might want to plan on having some sort of replacement or repair just in case, because it's an ongoing problem, and a lot of people are unhappy about that.
I suspect, given the age of those lines in Old Town, that they likely will find some sort of a problem in that area. Whether that solves the odor or not, we don't yet know. I would be surprised if we didn't find some sort of pipe
Okay, thank you.
problem.
I have another question. The Mojave River or the Mojave Walk, maybe this is appropriate to ask now. Mrs. Clapp donated $48,000 for benches, Apple Valley, and Victorville. She asked me where Victorville's were, so I'm wondering to give her back a response. So if anybody can let me know, so I can let her know where these benches are. I'm sure she'd be glad to hear a response, and we'd be happy probably to travel there and see them.
Yeah, we haven't paved our section yet. We are in that process now. Brian, if you can give us an update on that. That's a grant-funded project, about $3 million or so.
Yeah, I'm aware of the request, and we appreciate that. And we are going to purchase those benches as part of the project. It's a federally funded project. It's an active transportation program fund. And we are approaching 100% plans. And if we can get through all the Caltrans process, that can be kind of lengthy, getting the authorization to advertise. We're hoping to advertise this fall, so we can start late in 2017. And so then after that time, we could, order the benches as part of the project. We want to make sure the federal grant pays for it, so we're going to incorporate it with the project.
Any more questions? Is that all for you, Brian?
That's all I have.
All right. Doug Matthews?
Thank you.
I think you're up next. We're going to go backwards a little bit in the book, right?
Oh, it's on the same page.
Same page, okay.
Yes. Good afternoon. So I'm going to cover on that same Public Works Department summary page, the Public Works summary, the second one, and the water summary. Starting with the Public Works summary, if you look at the bottom, and here's our funding sources down there. That shows you where we pull our money from. It's very minimal in the general fund. The general fund is just fleet and graffiti. Everything else is funded out of other sources. The divisions we fund out of this would be fleet.
Excuse me, I don't know where you're at.
So,
Public Works summary is,
yeah. you'll
go
see
back to Public
Right
Works.
under engineering, there's Public Works summary.
And then it's Public Works summary.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Then there's municipal utilities, and there's water.
Okay,
Right there.
thank you.
So you'll see funding source at the bottom of the chart for Public Works summary. That gives you an indication of where our sources are coming from for the expenses shown above. The divisions we cover out of here are our fleet, our fuel pumps, graffiti, our CNG stations, sanitary sewer operations, BBWRA funding for pass-through costs, asphalt maintenance, weeds, shoulder maintenance, street sweeping, open space, concrete. We fund standby out of here. We take care of an Amtrak station. We do bus shelter maintenance. And we take care of 4 million square foot of landscaping in the LMADs and DFADs and MADs, as well as the drainage areas. And those are our assessment districts.
The operation and maintenance on the Public Works is up 26%.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll start. I was going to run line by line for you.
Okay.
So starting with personnel, the 9%, we do have 4 new positions slated for this year. 2 of them are equipment operators, and that's in our asphalt concrete division. We're trying to do crack sealing year-round. It's something we're not being able to keep up with because the roads are deteriorating so quickly that we need to put more effort to it. And currently that group does not have any equipment operators, so that will essentially get us more crack sealing crews out there. The other 2 positions are in the LMADs. They're just maintenance workers, and currently we only have 1 full-time person funded in there on the maintenance side for all 4 million square foot. We do use a contract service. But this will add 2 additional guys under him. He's a lead worker currently, and this will give him the opportunity to spread them out amongst the LMADs, watch over the contractor, help with some of the repairs and whatnot.
Question.
Yes.
The LMADs are, you have several of their assessments, and some were increased and some can't be.
Correct.
The LMAD supply sufficient revenue to pay so that it doesn't require any additional funding from the general fund?
Yes, the only one we supplement partially would be LMAD 4, and that's the downtown area. And the funds we collect there, and there's no cost inflator in there, but the funds we collect there are just enough to cover electricity and water. So we do send staff down there to trim and weed and do whatnot. We are going to take care of them, but it's something we have to look at. I think there's only, I'm guessing, 26 or something people in there that fund its businesses. So it's something we're looking at down the road to see if we can do to increase it and figure out, how to make that more viable. But for the rest of them, yes, for now, 1 through 4 do not have escalators. 1 through 3 are the ones that, we have the biggest problem with. We're not cutting back services yet, but down the road, as water continues to increase and electricity and whatnot, minimum wage, it will be a problem down the road, and we'll have to figure out what we can do. We did go out to a vote on 2 and 3 and 1, but of course it didn't make it. On the operations and maintenance side, 26% increase, that's about $3.4 million. $3 million of that is from the sewer. That includes $2.2 million for the CCTV that's running the cameras down for next fiscal year. It also includes about a $600,000 increase for BDWRA charges, $40,000 legal, $30,000 infrastructure repair. If you pull out that $3 million, that takes us down to the $466,000. Of that, we have $200,000 ET water clocks that we're putting in the LMADs, and part of that is grant funded. We have some bus stop shelter access projects for $70,000 in there, and we're increasing our contract services in LMAD 6 by about $150,000. So if you pull those out of there, the $3 million of those projects, that increase is about 0.3%. So on the O&M side, it's not, the actual operations maintenance are really not increasing that. It's mostly contract service type and pass-through costs in there. Going down to the other charges, the 10%, that's basically cost allocation that we're getting increased this year through the new study. And on the capital side, the 23% decrease, we had a lot of equipment we've been having to buy. You approved quite a bit of backhoes and graders and whatnot this year, street sweepers, and so while we still have some for next year, we have to stay in compliance. We have a schedule to, I believe, 2020. So, but this year was probably the worst year, and it'll lessen a little bit here and there until we get out to 2020 and become fully compliant, until they change the rules again. But that's why you see a decrease there. The capital side under Public Works is basically equipment and vehicles. Brian covered the capital projects under his. Any questions on the Public Works side? Okay, we'll flip over on the next page on the water summary. We'll start again with personnel, and there's only one new position in the water side, and that's a senior maintenance lead worker under water supply and water quality. Most of the divisions in Public Works, almost all of them, have basically an assistant supervisor under the supervisor to handle some of the tasks in the field, and when the supervisor's out, there's a second in command, and this is the only one that does it. We're filling that this year and putting that position in there to have that second in charge. So that'll be a slight increase there. Just like the other budgets, though, we do have COLA increase, fringe, merit, different increases like that, and that's what constitutes the personnel cost changes. There is one reclassification in there from a supply operator to an electrician. We just need more help on our SCADA side with all the electrical and SCADA equipment out there. They need another body, and we don't need it as much in production services. So we're not adding it, we're just reclassifying the position.
You happen to have an electrician employed that's in a totally different position?
Well, we actually, at this city, we have a SCADA, I believe it's a coordinator position. We have an electrical person under him, there's an electrician at the airport, and there's a bunch of electrical employees under Bemis. So they're kind of separate. Those guys over there are high voltage at the airport in Bemis, and these guys are more on the low voltage side with SCADA operations and whatnot. There's enough on the water side between all the wells and the SCADA that you just need the help. O&M side, you're only seeing about a 4% increase, and $100,000 of that is legal and some utility increases there. Production costs, they're actually going down, and the reason for that is our replacement makeup obligation to BBWRA is based on the prior year, and with the water reductions, our makeup obligation and replacement is quite a bit less this year compared to last year.
That's quite a bit.
Yes, good news.
Yeah, that's good.
You mean MWA, right?
Oh, what did I say?
You said BBWR.
You know what?
We're not going to replace any water with that.
No.
That's too wrong, Mike. Yes.
When you speak about water, is it WID 1, WID 2, reclaimed water, potable water?
Good question, it's all of them. So it's WID 1, WID 2, it's our reclaim, and it's our industrial wastewater treatment plant. So this water summary includes all those, and again, you can see the funding sources on the bottom. They kind of indicate that reclaimed and wastewater treatment are all in there. They're all rolled together. Other charges, one of the reasons that's going down is just that there were some expenses transferred out of there. So that doesn't mean our cost allocation is going down. We just had some OPEB costs coming out, and we retired the COP obligation. So that's why there's a net decrease instead of an increase there.
Another question. We have 2015, 3,300, 2017, 3,100, fiscal year 2018, 1,900, but the actual 68 million, well,
Yeah.
some explanation, please?
So those were fund transfers. So where you see it on the expense side is going on the revenue side somewhere else between the funds of, and because this covers all funds, 4, 10, 11, 12, and 13. So that was just asset transfers going from one to the other. So it's all internal, and it's just, it's not really indicative of what happened. It's just a paper transfer.
I'd like to see sometime what it is. Not today, but I'm just curious.
We can get the breakdown on that. Yeah, it was wastewater treatment plant involved between that asset and things with it. So.
Well, it's shown as a charge as part of the total operations. I don't know if it's a depreciation or if it's a fund transfer.
Asset transfer.
Oh, an asset transfer.
Right, an expense. So the
Yeah, I really do want to
money
see it.
transferred out and the asset transferred.
Okay,
We can get that for you.
thank you.
Yes. So heading down to capital is the last item on there. Just to let you know, our capital is tracking very well with our rate study. Engineering's done a good job of getting projects out. You've seen a lot come through, through here for approval to get built. Most of these include our small diameter steel main replacements, our plastic service line replacement program. We have a booster station from WID 1 to WID 2 that's going to be built this coming year. We have a turnout to the RQ pipeline that's going to benefit us quite a bit. We have a large meter replacement program to put ultrasonic meters in there. So the bulk of it has been pipeline, and as you recall from the rate study, if we had no capital, we wouldn't need a rate increase. Our O&M would be okay, but because of the capital, we needed a rate increase. This year, just to remind you, there's a 6.5% rate increase going into effect on July 1, and that's going to cover these capital projects. We will still be spending down our cash, and this tracks it through a 5-year period to where at the end of those 5 years, we're going to have the targeted amount of reserves left, and we will spend that cash down on the projects slated. We also have projects in there that we would like to get to, but we couldn't in the rate study because we stopped at the 6.5% increase. So if the projects come in well, if revenues do well, if expenses stay down, we can do more of the projects and we'll be ready to. The increase you see, if you look at the actual 16 at 6 million, we go up to 11 and then 14. We're a little short of the 11 this year, but it's been in design and it's ready to go out, so it's just going to span 2 years. A lot of times, some of these large projects, design takes long enough that you can't get it done all in 1 year, so it is going to span a year. So you plan for it 1 year. If you do get it built, you have the money, and if you don't, you roll it over to the next year. It's tracking very well. We probably have more capital in there than we planned on in the rate study, but that's a good problem. We'll build whatever we can afford, and we'll keep tracking it as we go. So. If you want to see the capital, it is on pages 53 to 82 in the back, but I wasn't going to go through 30 pages of discuss capital today. But it is in there. If you have questions later, we'd be more than happy to answer them. Like I said before, most of them are the small diameter steel main replacements and the plastic surface line replacements that we're targeting to get out. We do have a master plan we're completing and a few other things happening, but those are the highlights of it.
I think I have a question for you, actually. Not 100% related to budget, but I stopped by my house meet ranch at lunchtime. Got the pleasure of driving across the Mesa Road. I was happy I was in my four-wheel drive. Anyway, on my way back, I was trying to avoid that area, and I went down Bear Valley. I noticed there was some work happening south of Bear Valley on Amethyst. Is that you guys doing something out there, or is that part of the engineering project? Because I thought that the street reconstruction stopped at Bear Valley. Okay.
Part of this project, we're installing a fiber optic line that goes through the water tanks at Sycamore and Amethyst.
Okay.
It's for communications.
Okay. All right. I just saw work going on, and I thought it was odd because I didn't think it went that far. So that makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and Council, I get the short straw of presenting the municipal utility budget, which is lumped into the Public Works tab. And I'll go ahead and start. What I'd like to do is kind of roll through exactly what's here in the Public Works Department section. So if you go to the Department tab, Public Works, and then once I go through, similar to Mr. Matthews, I'm going to go through line by line and talk about the changes, but then I want to roll into the enterprise fund to kind of show you the financial, a little bit more of the financial perspective of how the Victorville utility is doing. So if you're all there, under municipal utility summary, you'll notice first that under the budget change, which is probably the easiest thing to try to track, figure out what's going on. In this particular case, they're all blank, but I'll read them to you because I think it was just an error in omission, because when you do track these on the enterprise fund, they're in fact there. So the first one is personnel. That one, actually, you can write in 61% increase. And a large part of the reason for that change has been a large focus of mine over the last year, and that's restructuring the department. We do increase full-time equivalents from 6.7 to approximately 10.2. Those numbers aren't exact people. There are a lot of shared human resources participating in the utility department. That alone is about a 53% increase, so that contributes to the largest part of that 61% change. The remaining 8% has to do with just cost of living. There's some position adjustments. That's pretty much it. On the operations and maintenance, that actually goes down by 14%. These are everything that goes into the gas and electric operations, contract services, consumables, transportation costs, so that actually decreases, which is good. Production costs, those are going to be your actual commodities. The Victorville utility, as you know, is involved in the natural gas business and the electric business, both at Foxborough and at SCLA. So the cost of commodity is largely what you're going to find in the production component. You'll see a 6% increase there. That's directly tied to the cost of the commodity. I know offhand that in this upcoming fiscal year, electricity alone, we do buy in bulk. We have a contract for about 93 million megawatt hours for next fiscal year. That price does go up slightly over the current year's price. Other charges is blank. That's also a 3% increase. The most notable one that I can find in there is probably cost allocation. Altogether, the total operating expenditures for VEMUS, that number is an increase of 3%. Capital in the order of $1.4 million, that goes down by 21%. And speaking to the funding sources that this rolled up budget pulls from, you'll find that at the very bottom, and that's VEMUS Electric, and VEMUS Electric includes both electric at Foxborough and SCLA, same for the gas, and then you have some public benefit funds that also are used to help the both utilities at both locations. And the VEMUS Cap and Trade Fund is something that VEMUS is eligible for. We actually roll that money directly into offsetting the electric rates and make the electric rates a little bit more affordable to the customer. If there aren't any questions from that, I'd like to go directly to the Enterprise Fund tab that deals with VEMUS, and this probably gives you a little bit better perspective of what those expenditures mean in the sense of how they compare to revenues.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
For the total operating expenditures, did you give us a figure to write in?
Yes. That number is going to be operations and maintenance is minus 14%.
The expenditure side,
Yes.
or just operations and maintenance is minus 14%?
Operations and maintenance is 14%. If you're asking for total operating expenditures, is that one?
Yes.
3% increase.
Total operating budget is basically zero difference, right?
It's actually going to be, we're upside down a little bit, and that'll be on the next.
No, I was just meaning on the summary page, there's a very bottom percentage missing to the total operating budget.
Oh, right, I'm sorry, that is 0%, yes.
Okay.
Why
So
did
you-
you have us write it in versus everyone else had something already in here?
Yeah, I think that's just a mistake in the printing.
Yeah, that was our error in our report. We have fixed it. Sorry about that.
But that chart is, in fact, the same chart if you go to the Enterprise Fund, and the very bottom chart, that actually has the numbers in them, so it was just an error in printing. But combined, and what this does is shows the Victorville Municipal Utility Funds 419, 420, 421, 422, 423, and 424. Those are the variety of funds that make up the department, all of which roll up to what you see here. And very generally speaking, the total revenues of the department are $14,829,402. And you'll find that on the total revenue side. You've got total expenses to the order of $15 million.
No, where's that at? I don't see it.
Go to the Enterprise Fund tab.
I did.
Yeah, you were there.
Oh, I was there, I just missed it. It's not,
He's flipping it 4, 5, 6 pages in.
oh, here.
No, mine's the last page.
Apologies again for missing page numbers on these. That would have been easier. We'll correct it for the next budget workshop. The updated budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, summarizing revenues, you got $14,829,000. Expenses, you've got $15,070,070. it actually shows an imbalance, and that imbalance is largely attributed to a capital project that's being taken on the natural gas side. And to make the difference in the balance work, effectively cash out that department is being used to make up the difference. But it's probably easier if I talk through the various divisions within the BMUS so that you can understand how their revenues and expenses work. And I'm actually going to share with you some numbers and information that's inside this chart that you're not seeing because this is just a roll-up. But speaking of natural gas, for 2 seconds, natural gas is funds 419 and 423. Combined, for those two funds, revenues were projecting at $2.67 million with an expense side of $3.6 million. That's an imbalance of $1 million, 1.02. In fact, the natural gas pipeline project that we're actually out for bid, expecting to award in June before you as the council, that is exactly the difference. So that's going to be paid for relying on cash on hand. We've looked at we've done a cash balance study and determined that adequate cash is available in the natural gas account to pay for that capital expense. So the biggest part of your deficit is from capital on gas. If we go to, well, speaking just operatively about the natural gas, you've got a total of about 54 meters out at SCLA. That's projecting to sell over the next year about 2.4 million therms of natural gas to customers at both SCLA and Foxborough. Going to electric, we pulled that out as well. Electric represents funds 420 and 421. Revenue on electric is $12,018,000 is what we project. Expenses are $11,140,000, so that's cash positive to the order of about $900,000, and that's how you make up that big difference to actually show the rolled up amount being so small, being upside down. On the electric side, that's 63 meters. We've got a peak demand of 16.9 megawatts of power, and we're on contract again to purchase another 93 million megawatts. We're projecting both on the natural gas side and on the electric side for sales to be flat. The capital that's included on electric, there's not a lot. We have some gas switch replacements that we're going to actually undertake. A safety project that we'd like to take on to help make it easier for or safer for our crew when working in vaults. One other thing that we do plan on taking on this year, and is a large part of why we had actually realigned a lot of staff with BMUS. One thing that I believe we can do is grow the utility with the right resources. But another thing that we need to do is come up with a good master plan that really defines how the BMUS electric system is going to grow, what capital improvements are going to be needed, and of course, once we understand what the master plan for that system looks like, then we can make sure that the rate structure we have is adequate to in fact, capture funds necessary to achieve that system goal. So with that, that's a high-level view of BMUS. I'll remain available for any questions or comments you have.
I have a question. So BMUS electricity and gas overlap in funds 419 and 421 only?
Natural gas is 419 and 423.
Okay, so it's not 419 through 423?
Correct. It's 419 and 423. Electric would be 420, 421, and 424.
Thank you.
Last but best, I'll say, is economic development. Sophie Smith, you're going to cover economic development and pinch hit for Eric on airport, right?
Yes, I will.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
And I say best only because this is the good news department.
So I'll start with economic development, small budget, and then we'll delve into SPLA, the larger budget. We'll be working off of the economic development tab on the budget book. I'll just start really briefly with an overview of the major functions of economic development. Our primary responsibility is marketing and business attraction, business development for the city. Other functions involve the wind down of our former RDA, the successor agency. We still pay off debt of the former RDA. And we also serve as the housing successor agency, the role that the city took over when the RDA was dissolved. And in that regard, we deal with compliance for all of our affordable housing projects. We deal with the housing assets that were inherited from the RDA. We manage the loans receivable, those types of things. Economic development is not funded by the general fund. Its funding sources are the successor agency, or the airport, which we heavily market, the enterprises such as VEMUS, and even there's some funding from water, in that we're trying to attract businesses that will come in and use all of the city's enterprises. For 17-18, the budget for economic development is about $4 million. That primarily includes debt service of the former RDA, but it also includes portions of staffing costs and just general operating costs. That's reflected on the first line there, on the first tab that we're looking at. I'm sorry, the second line, $4,011. As you can see, it's basically the same as last year because we're sort of in wind down mode as far as the RDA, and the expenditures pretty much remain the same, and our marketing budget for the year remains consistent. The department has in plan for 17-18 7 full-time equivalent positions.
I'm sorry, how many?
7. So that's a pretty basic, straightforward department. So if you have any questions on that, I'll answer those before we move into airport, which is a little bit more extensive.
I have a question.
Okay.
So on today's agenda, we have 2 RDA items. I know one of them is going to be sold. I don't know if the other one is also on sale. Both. Okay, that's fair. So will that sale liquidate any of the outstanding debts?
So in a roundabout way, it will. When former RDA properties are sold, the sales proceeds are used to pay off any old debt of the RDAs, and then if there are funds remaining above the annual debt services amount, they get distributed to the county, and then the county actually distributes those funds to the taxing entities. Okay. Any other economic development questions? Okay, so we'll move on to airport. Airport is also reflected, I think a better summary is on the back page, the back of the page we're just looking at, bottom section, airport division. You'll see that overall the airport budget is about $32 million for 2017-18. That number represents the 4 major funds that comprise SDLA. It's what we call the airport operations account, the off-airport account, off-airport operations account, and then lastly the debt service account. And so I'll cover them separately because they really are different type of funds that are bundled together and comprise the $32 million. If you go to the enterprise tab, 3 pages in, you'll see Southern California Logistics Airport Funds 450, 452, and 455. Flip over to the back of that page, you'll see what I was just mentioning. You'll see broken out separately funds 450, 452, and 455. So we'll talk about airport operations first. That is where you will see about 8.4 million in expenditures and about 8.36 million for budgeted revenues for the year. Airport revenues come from things like building and ground leases, fuel sales, landing fees that are charged for the airport. That's the basic revenues that go into the airport funds revenues. Basic expenditures would be all the staffing, the cost of maintaining the buildings, the cost of providing tower services, ARF or firefighting services. All of those types of things are in the expenditure line items. We work from, because we do not rely on the general fund, we start by projecting revenues and then make sure that our expenditures are in line with what we plan to generate for that year. So they're pretty balanced, as you can see there. The next fund is the off-airport operations. It's very small. It's for those properties that are not within the actual airport, airfield area, I guess. Some properties that are still owned by us that will eventually transfer to Sterling in our master development relationship with them. So we have small revenue received on some old leases and then small expenditures related to those buildings. That's what you see in the Fund 452, $145,000 line item there. And then the big line item is the SDLA Debt Service Fund 455. That is where revenue that comes through from VITA, from the RDA dissolution process, is received and then paid out in the form of the 9 different bond issuances that we have for SDLA. As you can see there, we're projecting revenue of about $26.7 million for debt service, which does cover our annual debt service amount, but because of prior year defaults as far as principal and interest and reserve shortfalls from the years where we were not generating high tax increment, it still doesn't cover all of the shortfalls, but we're starting to chip away at that large balance that was there from 2011 or 2012, 2013, 2014. So that's just a really high-level overview of the SDLA funds, and if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I have a question. Sophie, for clarification purposes, are these funds in consecutive order? So in other words, 450 with auto revenues, 452 for the expense and so forth?
So 450 would have both revenues and expenditures. 450 means that the revenues and expenditures in those columns are specifically related to on-airport operations. They involve running the airport, aviation type uses and facilities. The 452, which also has both revenue and expenditures, is going to be related to the properties that are more on the industrial side of the airport. And then 455 will also have both the revenues and expenditures, but those are specifically related to the bonds and the debt service and revenues that are specifically pledged and specifically allocated to debt service.
Good question.
Yes.
I understand your explanation about paying off the arrears, but this just shows income under the to service the debt. 27,106,000 expenses 23,680. There's about 2.6 million.
3 million.
3 million. Where does it go?
Yeah.
What fund does it go in? Who holds it?
That amount is projected to be transferred to the trustee, or to be held with the trustee for December 2018.
Should there be an asterisk there saying that so that it balances?
Part of it too is so we have to replenish the reserves, so it's just a transfer of cash. It's not actual expense.
They don't.
Cash.
Yeah, it's not a cash transaction, so it doesn't budget as an expenditure. But 100% of the 26 million that we're projecting, 26.7 million, will be paid towards debt.
So we have over 3 million in reserves we have to replenish. So there's nothing spending cash.
Because it transfers from an existing city account to a reserve account held with the trustee. It's not, it's basically like a transfer of funds.
It's not expensed.
Right.
It's still
Not expensive.
in count. And we are very close to having all of our arrears repaid. I think we're going to be less than $1 million at the end of next fiscal year, right, Christine?
Yeah, this June, we should be about 6.7 million. And then we have to replenish the reserves. And then pay the past due principal.
There's a reserve requirement in every one of those accounts, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
How many are in deficit position?
Just two.
Just two.
The 2007 and 2014.
Okay, thanks.
But anybody, I'm looking at three people here, but anybody recall exactly what the latest estimate is on when we'll be current, actually current on all?
18-19.
18-19. So,
Fiscal year 18-19 are the projections.
not the budget we're looking at now,
Okay.
but next year's budget will be finally be making everything whole, which is about a year ahead of the original projection, right?
Right.
I remember 2020 being the original projection, so the economy is improving, property values are improving more quickly than the experts originally 7 or so years ago were projected, so that's good news.
I have another question. Is the paper parcel Edge and Nevada derived from the master plan development, the master development plan? You know that.
I know what you're talking about. Can you say the question again so I understand?
We have an agenda item tonight. It talks about parcel, paper parcel,
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
called it.
yeah. Vacation of a road, yes.
Right, so I want to know, is that derived from that master development plan that you guys have with Sterling?
Yes, it is.
And then you're talking about debts. I'm not aware of those. There's two left, one from 2007 and 2008. Maybe later on if someone can give me information on that.
There, in the book, all 9 bond issuances, but there's actually 9 that are still outstanding for SDLA. They're listed individually in one of the tabs back here. Yeah, the debt service tab. Debt service tab, if you go there, and then on the second page, so you'll see the ones from the RDA, and then on the next page, you'll see all of the listings that talks about the outstanding principal and what's due on an annual basis there.
We can go through the explain what we were talking about as far as the reserve funds being used and depleted.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all of the departments. John, do you have any wrap-up comments, anything?
Other than, like Mr. Robertson said, we can come back at the very next meeting with all the changes and things that you wanted in here, and have a clean vote, along with any requests that you're asking for, whether that be extra public safety or any of the other items that you were considering from the last workshop that you talked about. So we'll be able to wrap it up right before the end of the fiscal year, get it adopted, so we can continue the operations for the state.
To give you an idea of some of the work we've done over the last 2 weeks, working with the departments, the rough estimate is we'll be back on the 6th with about $600,000 in surplus revenue in the general fund. And we'll be presenting options for additional police officers, purchase of a fire truck, both of which are very much needed. There are some capital items that we took out of the budget in order to free up some of that cash and instead give that option to the council if you wanted to pursue some of those items.
Are you talking about projected year-end this year or future
No, for
budget?
next year.
Oh, okay.
For next year. So the budget right now is essentially, that's in front of you, the book, is essentially balanced in the general fund.
That's what I thought.
So we've done a little bit of work over the last 2 weeks, and we'll continue to work on it over the next 2 weeks, and then get you an updated version. But that version, as of right now, and it's not final, it appears it's going to have in the neighborhood of $600,000 in surplus. So we're, right now, the things that we've thought of, based on comments from the last meeting and anything that we hear today, that we're going to present as options for the use of that, any surplus monies would be additional police officers, the purchase of the fire truck potentially. Some capital items that we have taken out of the printed budget in order to give them to you as an option rather than simply putting it in the budget. And then also, of course, replenishing reserves is another good use of any surplus at this point in time. With that, we'll open it up. Any questions, comments, any other requests you'd like us to cost out for that June 6th meeting?
Well, it's not related to that.
Okay.
The governor seems to be hinting that the income did not come in as projected, which I don't know what that means. They overprojected. It's higher than, I don't know what it means, but he's trying to hint that there may be a recession within the next year. I'm assuming a lot of things, but we need state money, and we need federal money, and we need state grants. And I know 2 years ago, when he didn't want to give any grants, he made this projection of short revenue, when actually there was a positive revenue. Does anybody look at those projections from the state and make any guesses whatsoever?
Not to offend our dear governor, but the short answer to that is no, we don't use his projections at all. We do our own. And actually, right now, based on working with finance staff and myself, I used to do this every year, as you know, Mr. Cox. We are using a figure of, if I recall, it was about 5% for property tax increase for next year. It was either 4 or 5, because we continue to see increases in property values. If you look at home prices right now, they continue to go up. We see a pretty healthy continuance of that. Sales tax, we're actually budgeting flat. Our very last meeting that we had with our sales tax consultants, it was pretty obvious that where sales taxes had been rising 2, 3, 4% on a quarterly basis, year over year quarterly, that did not occur in our last quarter that we had. Now, we do have a meeting coming up next week with them, and we'll use that to be sort of the final gauge of where we think sales tax is going to be and really where they think it's going to be. They do a really great job of making those predictions based on probably 100 different economic factors. They do it for over 400 cities throughout the state, as well as a lot of counties. So the one thing that we provide a lot of input into those numbers when it comes time for budget is our new developments that are under construction at the south end of the city. There's a 5-unit building that will have 5 different eating establishments in them, 4 of which are new. One is a Starbucks that we believe is likely to be one that's moved. There's a standalone hamburger restaurant, and then, of course, the Cracker Barrel. We'll come up with some idea when those are going to be finished, talking with our building department. And then those sales tax experts that we've hired, they can look at other similar markets with the same store and give us a good estimate. Say they open in October, November, December, here's how much additional sales tax we should expect from those things. That's the biggest part of the input that we give them, is kind of a prediction of when new shops are going to open that are going to be sales tax generators. So we'll have that number updated by the June 6th meeting as well. That meeting is in about a week. So.
Now, the reduction in sales tax from 8% to 7.75, did that have an impact on our...
Not at all, no. That was actually a portion of the state's sales tax.
Oh, okay.
The city portion is 1%.
So regardless,
and
we
that
still
didn't
get
change
the...
at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was okay.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. John, pleasure. John, what would be the approximate date that we would get a clean version?
I'm hoping to give it to you guys a week prior to the June 6th meeting, to give you guys a full week to absorb the information and do your reviews and have any questions prepared for us at that time.
Okay, thank you. You had mentioned a few comments. I didn't grab them all, but I know that you started a discussion with what he had laid out. Doug, I want to know, how are we tying in the law enforcement contract to be folded into all this? You might have touched a little bit, but...
Yeah, so the contract that's on the open agenda tonight at 6 o'clock is on there because the county needs to plan for their their own fiscal year. So assuming that's approved by the council tonight, it would be approved contingent upon the approval of this or adoption of this budget at some point before June 30th, which we fully expect. The additional police officers that will be proposed and potentially acted out on June 6th, that would be a different contract. And so we've asked from the Sheriff's Department for an updated Schedule A, it's called. That's the list of services that they're providing. So that we can compare that to the one that's on the agenda tonight and give you an actual cost of, should you want to add 2 officers, this is what it would be. As I recall from my email earlier this week, it was between $400,000 and $450,000 to add the two new deputies. It was $436,000, $438,000, somewhere in that range. So a little bit less than $250,000 that I pulled off the top of my head 2 weeks ago per deputy. So it looks like it's more like $220,000 or so. So that'll be some of the options that we're anticipating discussing on June 6th. And then, of course, the Sheriff's Department typically can act very quickly if we ask for additional deputies because they have deputies in either the county areas or in the jails who are ready for a different assignment and can be moved if the contract city is willing and able to hire additional. It moves pretty quick.
Question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And then Captain Schuler, maybe have you engaged in any discussions as to what personnel would be coming in if you have the potentiality of getting 2 new officers, code enforcement, homelessness? Any idea?
Question?
Have you engaged in any discussions what kind of personnel you'd be hiring when it comes to either the Division of Homelessness, code enforcement, deputies on the street covering beats? Any idea?
Well, we'll get deputy sheriffs, and then when they're here, we'll decide where they're going to work. And patrols are bread and butter. And if we see a need to put them to tackle the homeless problem or whatever problem we see, we make that decision at that time.
Go ahead, Jim.
Are there any motorcycle deputies left?
Not any on-road motorcycle deputies in the desert that I'm aware of. I know Ranch Cucamonga has a couple, maybe 2 or 3. We do have some off-road motorcycles, but I don't think that's a full-time gig for any of them. I think that's just the lucky ones that get that assignment on occasion.
Just curious.
You like motor cops?
I like to get through an intersection without having it totally blocked.
Yeah.
And when they see a policeman on a motorcycle, they don't block the intersection. Maybe we can put a picture of one up or something.
Yeah. I have not had a discussion with Captain Schuler or Captain Lucia before he left here. He told me that a traffic officer in a police vehicle with 4 wheels can do everything that a motor officer can. Now, it doesn't have the same impact visually, I guess, as a motor does. I agree with you there.
Just curious.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, requests for us to study as far as costs?
I don't have any.
Well, I did have one question. The state has approved huge billions for transportation or transit. Do we know the number and that we would get? Is it assured or just some kind of a promise? And has that been included in the budget, or are we going to wait till we get the check?
Well, we're waiting at this point
Okay.
because I don't trust the state and I don't trust the legislative action that was taken.
Okay.
Assemblyman Jay Overnolte has asked a very pointed question of the legal department of the state. I don't recall which one, but that is that the state either has a section of the Constitution or a section of law that says that it is illegal for the state to earmark funds for transportation projects. And if you recall from the adoption of that, there was 2 or 3 holdouts that the folks that were pushing that bill needed, and they were able to negotiate tens of millions, if not $100 million in projects within their own district in order for for them to vote in favor of it. So on the face, at least, it would appear that Assemblyman Oldenolfi has asked a very good question. So we aren't budgeting anything. I have seen some estimates, but I don't recall what they were. I don't know if anybody else in the audience does. 800,000, Mr. Metzler has said, that would be additional gas tax fund that we could use on street fares, those sorts of things.
Let's wait.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we don't budget things until we're pretty certain they're going to come.
I have another question, Doug. Before you were going to respond to this question, you mentioned if there was any requests for studies. You didn't finish your sentence. So I was
Well,
what did you mean?
Based on conversations 2 weeks ago, we know that there was a lot of interest in adding deputies. And then we also are aware, based on the fire proposal that we received and just based on maintenance activities, that we are in need of a new fire truck. And then there was some, as I mentioned, there's some capital items that we took out of the budget in order to present it more as an option rather than just simply the budget's balanced and we're going to replace a couple of roofs that maybe we can wait a year on. And then putting money into reserves is also highly recommended in good times. I can tell you right now that if there is a recession, it would be very painful based on the level of our reserves in the general fund. We've been through that pain before, and I'd like to see us get to a point that we can start to replenish those reserves so that we can weather some of those storms. So beyond that, it was really just opening it up to the council if there's any other options you'd like us to study as far as the costs, that we can present them on June 6th for possible direction to put into the final budget, which we anticipate coming to the council on June 20th for final adoption.
So then you're asking council to...
Any other wish list items?
Before June 6th comes about so that we can have that study by the future so we can adopt something or 2 police officers being added?
So, well, that's already happening.
Okay.
But what I'm doing is just kind of throwing it out there. Is there something else other than police officers, fire truck, some capital items or reserves that you'd like us to present as other options that you could then direct us? Not asking for direction right now, just sort of a wish list of, so anything that you didn't hear about in this budget that you'd like to see added, if we can add it. Not to have that discussion and debate right now, but let us put it on the list so that we can have a healthy discussion about that in a couple of weeks.
And what's the current reserve level that we have?
We're on 3 point, what is it, John? Or Christina? 3.4.
Yeah.
3.4 is in reserves, and with the added SBCA's that you guys had approved like almost a month ago, we took additional funding out of those general fund reserves to get those SCBA's for fire. Those are the breathing apparatus. That was like $381,000. That'll take us at the end of the year a little over $3 million, and just over $3 million in reserves. And then there's also consideration too that Mr. Robinson had said at the previous budget workshop that PD's retirement costs, they gave us a schedule in the next 5 years, and the 18-19 budget is about $1.2 billion. Right. So just to take that into consideration too as we go forward. Dependent on investments somewhat, but that's the projection right now.
I would like to see maybe a list of the different types of fire trucks, because I understand they're not just one price and one type.
Okay.
So.
Sure, we can do that. Yeah. One's a medic engine, one's a brush engine, there's ladder truck. Sure.
Any
All
other
I've got.
questions?
That's all I've got.
Then we move on to public comments. I don't have any cards. Is there anyone that would like to come up and speak? I don't see anyone. So,
I move we adjourn.
Second.
this meeting is adjourned till Tuesday, June 6th, 2017 at 3 p.m. for a workshop to discuss fire services.
June what?
June 6th. Here.
Oh.
I sent that to you.
I'm done.
Yeah.